Yeah. Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Let's get it. Pro fans, tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam. Sean on the mic, very flat too. Keep you updated, that's what we do. Pro fans, tune into the program. Pro fans, tune into the program. Pro fans, tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam.
Yo, what to do, everybody? It's your boy John Altidor, Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Back at you with my boys Vlad, Barry, and welcome back to the show. CBS Boston sports writer and content producer at WBZ, Michael Hurley. How you doing, man? Welcome back.
Doing good, thank you. I'm happy to be asked back. Most people don't ever ask me back to anything, so this is nice.
Hey, we got to apologize because we sick Barry out on you. We're like, get that man back in here.
No apology necessary.
Barry,
always happy.
He's like, come here. And it's like that guy in Mortal Kombat, you know what I'm saying? It's like, he's in there. Yeah, man. Mike, we already started talking, right before we did the little intro here, man. Patriots, right now, we're in the AFC East, and they're not really making anything easy for us this year, man. The Jets, we're back to being last in the division. The Jets, they started, I guess, Tom Brady thing going on over there. They started back up, and that guy, is already thrown 3 touchdowns, to Zach Wilson's 4 touchdowns already, man. What are you thinking about this division, man? Can we wiggle ourselves into the playoff picture right now? Because it's looking hard.
There's a path, and I think the Patriots are in a better position than they were in 2020 when everyone was mapping out a way to the playoff. They win this game. In 2020, they just weren't good enough. I think this year you can finagle a scenario where even if they lose to Buffalo, which I think they will, if they can go out and beat Arizona and Las Vegas on the road, you get the Bengals are kind of a wild card this year. Some weeks they look great, some weeks they don't. And then the Dolphins on New Year's Day up here in the cold, you never know how that could go. And then after that, let's say it's week 18 and you got to beat the Bills. Maybe the Bills are locked into the number 2 seed or the number 3 seed and aren't playing anyone and are resting guys. You have a chance. So it's definitely possible. I know we're focused on the Patriots, but the Chargers and Jets have some difficult schedules too. So it's possible, but man, it does feel like letting that one slip on Thanksgiving could come back to bite them. Either that or the Bears game, like one of those you're going to look at and be like, you could have used one of those. And that might be the difference.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you brought that up, and happy Thanksgiving to the people watching. Hope y'all had a good holiday, man. But Thanksgiving around here, it was great, but that game kind of stung a little bit. We saw a lot of things going on, mixture of penalties, stupid calls, and a lot of things that didn't go our way. What'd you think about the game, and how we really lose that game? Because it looked like one of the better games we've had this year.
Yeah, it was tough. The kick return was obviously, I think, as big as anything. That's a guy that had 2 kick returns for touchdowns last year. In the special teams meetings, it was pounded into their heads to contain, and obviously they didn't. There was obviously a missed holding call on that, but that is sports. Sometimes that happens. And then the running into the kicker penalty. I get being aggressive. I get wanting to make a game-changing play, but you're sending a rookie running back after a punter. It's just you're inviting that decision. All you have to do in that scenario is not do that, and then you don't give the free first down. I thought that was bad, but there was the poor clock management at the end of the first half with Hunter Henry. I don't know how he doesn't recognize to get out of bounds. People are going to Mac for the next play, but, that's also sports. Sometimes you get stuck in the middle of the field, but Henry running along the sidelines, a lot of mistakes like that. The reversal of the touchdown obviously didn't help. We could probably do a 6-hour podcast on what constitutes a catch alone, but we don't need to do that. But just certainly a couple things didn't go their way. Maybe if one of them went the other way, it's a different result. But it was obviously a good Vikings team, and they hung in there. So that's encouraging, I guess, if you want to take a bigger picture thing. But just the little things that the other teams always used to do against the Patriots are just doing now, and it's been a couple years, and it's still I'm not used to it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's so uncharacteristic, and we're all upset over here yelling at these guys on TV. Like I said, it was one of the better games this year. Mac Jones looked like Mac Jones of last year. That guy he looked decisive, was throwing it out there when he needed to. I think he took a couple stupid sacks, but, that happens, like you said. But he was looking really good out there. But yet, red zone offense, something just seems to always be happening. What do you attribute that to? Like, what can we do to fix that right there?
This is very revolutionary. This is exclusively for you guys. I would try throwing the football into the end zone because they feel like that's not in the plan ever. It's always, I don't know what it is, but in this case, they got to the red zone early and ran a reverse to Kendrick Bourne and lost 7 yards and immediately blew that opportunity. It's just, this is part of the issue when you have a first-time offensive play caller. Is he's never done it before, and the trial and error that goes into it usually doesn't happen at this level. Usually there's elements to it where you're working up, and I just think it's Matt Patricia. Like I don't know any other way to look at it, but then the guy calling the plays, because going into Sunday, I haven't checked since yesterday, but I assume it hasn't changed. The worst red zone offense was Denver, which is a disaster this year. And then 31st was the Patriots, with a pretty big gap between them and 30. So it's not like a couple bad scenarios where they're bad for the Patriots. They're bad. And that's when you're not good enough to win, 50-7 like you used to be. Those things matter more. The margins of red zone, of third down, where they're also very bad. It costs you games. And I think this is one that is a good example of that. Now, you can still go out and blow out the Lions occasionally and things like that, but these close games, you're going to lose more than you win when you play like that. And I just think this is the price you pay for going into the season with that coaching staff.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Vlad.
I feel like a fan of a team that hasn't had any success, because I'm just trying to cling on to anything positive I see. And, this week I thought as though that was the most complete game offensively, even though we didn't have any red zone efficiency was in question. But offensively, it just looked like a better game. The tight ends were involved. Matt Patricia seems to remember that we have tight ends that we paid a lot of money for. What do you think? What did you think of the offensive performance this time around? Because that was the most enjoyable game all year. Although we lost, it really was.
Yeah, that opening drive was impressive. No doubt about that. After that was the Jonathan Jones pick, which set them up in the red zone, which led to the reverse where they went backwards. So that one wasn't great. But certainly they moved the ball. I would say I didn't love a couple of things. One was sort of game scenarios. End of the first half, like we mentioned, only getting one shot at the end zone before halftime, I think, was poor management. And then at the end of the game, getting the ball at the 11, maybe it's a long shot anyway, but Mac taking a sack for a loss of 10. Everyone has to run back 50 yards just to get to the line of scrimmage as the clock ticks. And then they throw 2 balls in the middle of the field, run the clock out, and lose. So there was some execution things that didn't look good there. But along the way, obviously, it's as good as they've looked. It feels like forever. Like you said, clinging for positives. It was sort of like when Henry scored the touchdown that didn't count, the second one, it felt like I was watching a whole different team. So that kind of, I don't know if that emotionally or whatever hurt them, because they went 3 and out twice in a row after that and then had the turnover on downs. So it stalled at the end. They probably needed one more scoring drive, but on the road with a hyped up crowd, everyone's dressed like Vikings out there and playing dress up and blowing in the horns and all that stuff. Like, it's a tough place to play. So I think on the whole, they had a good game and something to feel good about going into this game, where I think I still am taking the Bills. I still, if I'm a betting man, I'm taking the Bills, but the Bills look as vulnerable as they have in a couple years. almost losing on Thanksgiving to the Lions. So if they can come out, the Patriots, if they can come out and play offensively like they did last week, they got a chance to win this one, which going into the year, I think everyone said it was a waste of time to talk about. So it's possible.
In your opinion, was it a catch?
I think so. I mean, for one, they changed the rule after Jesse James caught it and lunged forward, and everyone got mad, and rightfully so. That should have been a touchdown, but by the rules, it wasn't. So they changed the rule and said, listen, if you catch it and you reach over, obviously that's what he did, but it didn't count. And then secondly, I just think, well, two things. His hand, people, because they can't see his hand anymore, like, where else could it have gone? It was under the ball, and then it disappears from the camera, and then it's back under the ball after. It's like his hand was there the whole time. And then lastly, they looked at it for like 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, and still hadn't figured it out. And if you have to look at any video for 5 minutes, then it's not obvious enough to overturn it. So if they called incomplete, should have stayed that. Like, there wasn't enough clear and obvious evidence. You had the rules expert, Terry McCauley, talking about surviving the ground, which hasn't existed since the Jesse James rule. You had Walt Anderson, the VP of officiating, referencing that rule, which, again, doesn't exist anymore. Walt Anderson's the same guy who, you might remember the Bengals-Raiders playoff game last year. They blew the whistle before a touchdown was caught, and he came out and said that was blown after the catch. And it's like, we have Twitter. Like, the video's on there. Like, everything with the NFL and their rules and enforcing it just smells to high heaven. So maybe it's a little pet peeve of mine, but it bothers me. So I feel like you should reward athleticism, and that was athleticism, and it was punished.
I was listening to Touch and Rich this morning, and they had one of the Patriot reporters for ESPN, Mike Reese, and he was saying in the off season they'll bring the referees to the coaches meeting, and they'll have 20 plays, and 10 of them they would say it's a catch, 10 of them they say it's not a catch, and the coaches are like, well, they all look the same, like we don't even know what's a catch, you know what I mean? So it's pretty frustrating. I mean, you kind of have to live with it, but it's pretty frustrating to not know what a fucking catch is.
Did you see Des Bryant's tweet meltdown about it? Because obviously he is sort of like the basis of the whole problem. He was, I think he shut the game off. He was so mad. And I think that's, I mean, the thing with this is it's the Patriots, and so many people hate the Patriots that it was more entertainment than anything. But it just, I mean, Des was what, 9 years ago, and we're still trying to solve this issue. It's like sort of as cameras and technology got better, the definition of a catch has gotten worse. And remember 2 weeks ago when the Vikings-Bills game, the Bills had the catch along the sideline where, I forget who it was, Gabe Davis, I think, completely dropped it, and it's on the turf, and that would have been, you know, the replay official has to initiate. They didn't initiate it, and the Bills go down and tie the game and force overtime, and it's like, this league can't get anything right, and it just add it to the list, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
I thought once you cross the plane, like, it's a touchdown, regardless what happens. Like, is that not the thing anymore?
Well, his feet weren't down yet, but so he's in the air with 1 foot down and reaches, but then his knee does hit like at the same time as his hand, which theoretically should be touchdown based on the rule like ABC, but I guess they're saying the knee wasn't down before the ball hit the ground, and it's like, you don't know that. I mean, come on.
And I was pretty upset because I had him in fantasy in both of my teams.
That's not as bad, though, as Derrick Henry yesterday with, like, the 80-yard screen pass, fumbling at the 5, and the rookie receiver picked it up in the end zone and got the touchdown.
Yeah.
Well, he got you the yardage, but didn't get you 6 points.
Had the fumble and missed out on the touchdown, so that was a big one.
Oh, bad hit. He gets charged for a fumble. I thought you get charged if you lose a fumble.
Oh, good. I don't know. I don't play fantasy. I retired like 12 years ago, so I'm not the right person to weigh in.
Oh, didn't really have any too much luck with fantasy?
I enjoy football Sundays. I love to sit there and watch wall to wall. Like yesterday with the Patriots off, watching from 1 to 11. I didn't enjoy it when fantasy was in my life because I'm pissed about one thing or the other and rooting for one running back over the other, and they vulture the touch. It would ruin my whole day. So I retired, and I don't miss it.
I hear you, man. Hey, I know it's fantasy stuff for everyone, and not everyone can be good or successful when it comes to fantasy football. Yeah, it's a lot tougher than it looks, as we can see. But I wanted to ask you, because this is the thing that's been frustrated me a lot with with this team the last couple years. Why do you think they make so many mistakes time and time again to prevent themselves from winning these close games and shooting themselves in the foot when they have opportunities and to be able to to win these games like they did on Thursday? Like, why do you think that continues to keep happening really since, fortunately, I hate to say it, since Tom Brady's left?
Yeah.
I mean, that's happened numerous times.
Yeah, I was thinking about it earlier, and I do think Brady himself was a big factor, because look what he did to Tampa, and it wasn't just like the offense. Like, the defense knew they had the greatest player in the world on their team. They had to be on their P's and Q's. Like, they didn't want to mess up, and that was a loser franchise that hadn't won a playoff game since the Super Bowl in 2002. So that's a factor, but I think a bigger factor, it's not like Bill Belichick all of a sudden forgot how to coach or doesn't focus on these little things. I think he does, but the staff as a whole has lost so much brain power and experience. Like, just look at Dante Scarnecchia, Ivan Fears. Those guys had combined like 45 years in your system. Like, that's the culture that is in the meeting rooms. Guys, remember X, Y, and Z. Every day you might hear the same thing, and it sort of helps button those things up. And then factor in, like, there was like sort of a mass exodus after 2018, I think, like when Flores left, a bunch of defensive assistants left, and the replacements have come in. I say, look at offensive line. You went from Scarnecchia, who's people say is like maybe the best offensive line coach ever. I don't know how you quantify that, but he's one of the best offensive line coaches ever. And he was replaced by Cole Popovich and Carmen Brasillo for 2020. Then Popovich left, and you had Brasillo, and then Brasillo left, and now you have Patricia, who's also running the offense. And think about when Isaiah Wynn makes a mistake on the field and goes back to the bench. He doesn't have Dante Scarnecchia on a knee saying, listen, focus on this, next drive this. Patricia has 7 other responsibilities that he's responsible for, and he's never coached offensive line since he was an assistant in 2005. So I think just the slow loss of experience and just really good coaches, it adds up. And that's not to say, like, well, I will say I don't know what's his name, the special teams coach, Cam McCord. Maybe he's not a good coach because they make way too many special teams mistakes, and that's been going on since last year, where it's just like, this is how you lose games. And you two in this game alone, with the kick return and with the penalty roughing the kicker, like, you just don't do that. And so that's a big one. And I don't know that Joe Judge is an amazing coach overall, but he must have been pretty good at special teams, because they weren't doing that when he was in charge of it. So that's a long answer, but I just think it's just they've lost a lot of experienced, smart, championship caliber coaches, and I don't think they've been replaced with the same level.
No, I totally hear you on that. There was certainly, really good, valid points as far as why they've had trouble winning these close games and continue to make these boneheaded and stupid mistakes time and time again. Wanted to ask you, as far as the defense, how do you think they played and performed? Is this defense legit? Like, are they as good as, they, statistically are, or as, people think? Or what are your thoughts on how the defense looked on Thursday night against the Vikings?
Well, I was shocked that Matt Judon was a non-factor, because going in with the left tackle, Christian Darrisaw going out, I was like, this guy's going to get 5 sacks on Thanksgiving. And I thought And I thought it was going to happen the other way too with the Patriots out without David Andrews. I thought we were going to just see nothing but sacks. But the Vikings had a good game plan. They adjusted better. And I think it was kind of a reality check because when you play Zach Wilson, you can say, man, they didn't need a number one cornerback, which you might remember Belichick was asked about that in like August. Like, do you need a number one cornerback? And he was like, no, I don't think so. And it's like, well, you've had one since 2014, really, with Revis into Butler, into Gilmore, into Jackson. And now you go into this year and like Jonathan Jones has been great, but going up against all-world talent and Justin Jefferson, it was kind of a reality check that life isn't that easy without a number one corner. Now you have Stephon Diggs. And now, granted, you had J.C. Jackson last year, and it didn't matter. You couldn't stop the Bills for your life. So there's no use focusing on that alone. But I think as you face better offenses, Tyreek Hill's going to be on the schedule again. Jamar Chase is going to be on the schedule. Who else? Devontae Adams is on the schedule.
DeAndre Hopkins.
Hop is on the schedule. So it's good challenges lying ahead on the schedule. So I think what we saw with Jefferson might be the extreme of that. They can do better than that, but you're going to get burned a few times going forward. So definitely it's hard to get a big picture because like you shut the Jets down so badly and shut the Colts down, but you played Sam Ellinger and Zach Wilson that you almost want to really put it in perspective. I mean, Kirk Cousins isn't the greatest quarterback of all time. So if he carves you up like that, there's going to be some better scheme. The pass rush has to be better because I think the back end's not going to bail them out in this last month.
No, agreed. Absolutely. They got to get a better play up front from the D-line and the front, seven, right? Yeah, they really got one sack. One sack's not going to cut it. This team's not going to win games only getting one sack. You were the second, had the second most sacks coming into this game. First was the Cowboys, and the Cowboys had 7 sacks against Kirk Cousins. The same offensive line you faced, and the fact that you only had one, and they shut down the your best pass rusher and the sack leader in the NFL is pretty alarming and astonishing to me. I was blown away by that.
I think they're coached by a quarterback, a pretty talented offensive play caller, a scheme designer, and maybe that's the difference. You have a guy that's better at it, and that's not like a shot at anyone. I just think he got that job for a reason, and maybe that's what we saw. They laid an absolute egg against the Cowboys, and then 4 days later looked much more competent. So I just sometimes want to give credit to where it's due. And I think Kevin O'Connell, I forget his offensive coordinator's name. Whenever the head coach is clearly the offensive coordinator, I don't really focus too much on his underlings. So that was like when Frank Reich fired his offensive coordinator. It's like, no, that's Frank Reich. So I give credit to Kevin O'Connell for that. I mean, you have to.
Yeah. Mike, you talked about the Patriots losing a lot of brain power, in their coaching staff. A name that keeps coming back, in the offseason now, I've just been seeing it the last couple of days is Bill O'Brien. The rumors talking about maybe he wants to make an NFL return. Would that be something you'd look at if you were Bill Belichick?
I would certainly just the history and experience and capabilities. I definitely would. I don't know that Bill will. I don't really know why Bill went into this year with Patricia running the offense. So getting to the bottom of that would help answer that because it didn't make any sense then. So I can't say that they're going to go change course next year because it won't make sense to stick with the same system and stick with the same plan. But it didn't make sense this year either. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think Bill O'Brien is like a savior by any means. He was here, 09 through 11, 2010, they went 14-2. So they had a pretty good offense. How much of that is Bill O'Brien? How much of that is the quarterback? Probably more the quarterback at that point, coming off an 07 season where he threw 50 touchdowns, but he was still running the show. He's still competent, still has run some good Alabama offenses. I don't know that his Texans career is like something we sit around and say was amazing by any means. So I think he's better than Matt Patricia. I think he's a step in the right direction. But I still think the equation that's changed was, remember going into the summer, is like, well, if they get O'Brien and he wants to be a head coach again, and he leaves after a year, then you're going to have 3 offensive coordinators for Mac in 3 years. So I don't know what the equation is with Mac. Are they still committed to him long term? I don't blame him personally for this year, but I don't know how they look at it. And then B, Bill's future, is Patricia the guy that's next? Like there's all these things where that might factor in. But to me, the shortest way I could say it is, yes, like hire an offensive coordinator, please. Like make this look more. We can't be distracted by 1 week. Like the season long numbers are ugly. They're hurting their quarterback. They need someone who's better at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mac hasn't had the greatest year so far, but I still think Mac is the guy for this team. Based on what we have, on the roster. What do you think about how he's handled things this year so far?
I think, for him to go to the podium Thursday night and be the same Mac was pretty impressive, because that was a frustrating game, obviously, for a lot of reasons, that I think maybe a less composed sort of someone who hadn't been through the Saban-Belichick ringer for the past 6 years might have popped off a little. He's the same. He's got a good, calmness about him that I think probably helps him. But I'm just trying to be fair. Like going into the year, I was like, I'm not really going to judge this kid too harshly based on the system or the environment that he's been placed into. And so I can't, he's making it tough with 6 touchdowns and 7 interceptions as December comes along, but I don't necessarily blame him that much. And that's not to say he hasn't made some bad picks or hasn't made some bad mistakes, but for the most part, he's had no blocking. For the most part, I would say the route concepts and the offensive scheme overall is pretty elementary. There's been nothing high level about it. So he's doing what he can in that. So it's kind of a cop-out, but I kind of give him like an incomplete grade this year, because I don't know many quarterbacks. Maybe like he's coming back to like Deshaun Watson or someone that is like used to having no offensive line and running around and throwing deep could succeed. But for the most part, in terms of play-to-play, quarterbacks that could have succeeded this year with the Patriots, it's a short list. So I'm not going to get on Mac too much for not being there in year 2, especially. We kind of forget that sometimes because it seems like it's been a while. But year 2, that's a lot to put on a kid. So I don't think he's been great this year, but I'm not going to like ship him out of town because of that, because I don't think it's his fault.
So you think if you were Mac, you'd pull a Kyler Murray talking about schematically we're fucked? It's like,
I don't know.
I wouldn't blame him. Like
no, I wouldn't. And Kyler, I don't know. I feel like that homework clause that got out this summer ruined that relationship so bad. Because a couple weeks ago, or was it the Mexico game, whatever it was, Kyler going to the sideline just ripping Cliff Kingsbury, who might be a clown. Not entirely sure, but might be a clown. There's bad, and yeah, you're right. Like Mac would be justified to do that, but I don't think that's in his repertoire. So it's probably behind closed doors, whatever it may be. But hopefully he speaks up, because he deserves better, I think.
Absolutely.
No, he definitely does, and I hope he says something. I don't think he, like you said, Mike has it in him to do that, or that the Patriots will allow that, for him to say that. But that's certainly wouldn't blame him if he says that. I feel like he has certainly a right to say that, because that's the truth. That's just the facts. But I wanted to ask you, Michael, who do you think is more responsible for the Patriots' success during the Patriot dynasty? Is it Bill Belichick? Is it Tom Brady? What do you think? What are your thoughts on who you would give more of the credit to?
I think the easiest way is like Brady wouldn't have won 6 without Belichick, and Belichick wouldn't have won 6 without Brady. So I just think that's the most realistic way. It's probably more the quarterback just by the impact of a game. Like the coach can't go out there and throw a touchdown or escape a rush or so I give, I guess, more to Brady. But I think the rewriting of history these past couple of years with how things have gone is wrong. Like we can go back and I even wrote a story, I think, I don't know, a year or two ago, where it was like, these are other times where it was Belichick and not Brady, because it was sort of like, because Brady was still doing well, everyone was saying, well, it was all him. Like Belichick is and was a great coach. And there were so many instances where that shone through, whether it was obvious or whether it was more, subtle things that maybe you learn on the Super Bowl DVD, things like that, that I just think people have been too quick to be like, well, it was clearly all the quarterback. Because, I mean, look at Brady now without a coach that understands timeouts, a coach that doesn't believe in him. He lost to the Browns yesterday. So there's a combination that I think it was just a quarterback. Young Tom Brady probably leaned on Belichick more, and older Belichick probably leaned on Brady more because Brady was that much better. So I don't like the way that it's been sort of A or B or whatever. I can't separate the two because they both have so much, greatness, that to say it was one and not the other. But that wasn't what you asked. You asked more. So more Brady, but that's only by virtue of, he actually plays the game.
All right. Well, Mike, man, again, thank you for coming on the show and giving us some of your time, man. We're really glad you decided to come back on here and sharing your thoughts on the Patriots. So, you're always welcome to come back on the platform, and we enjoy you on here, man. So with that said, hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
I have one last question.
You have one last question? Go ahead,
Black,
man.
last question. Okay, Black.
Mike, as you can see behind me, I have the World Cup schedule.
Yep.
And I don't know if you've been watching any of the games, but the U.S. has a big game tomorrow. What do you think is going to happen? I think if they win, they stay in the competition, and if they lose or tie, they're out.
I'll be honest, my football expertise is not too high, but given the way they kind of blew that 1-0 lead against Wales, I don't love them in crunch time in a tough moment. So I think they got to pull in England and score like 6 against Iran, and that's probably their best bet to get through. But my biggest World Cup takeaway is I'm not like a soccer aficionado. I watch the World Cup and watch some MLS and occasionally like a Premier League game, but I know what offsides is. But then like today when Brazil scores and it gets taken back, it turns out I don't know. It's like, what's a catch? I don't know what offsides is when it actually gets applied. And it's like it's so hard to score a freaking goal. Like, can we adjust that? Like people are celebrating for 10 minutes and they take it off. So far that's been my takeaway. But I mean, I hope the U.S. makes it just to make it more interesting and relevant, because every game I watch, it's sort of, it's what was today? Switzerland versus someone. So
Switzerland was versus Brazil.
Yeah. Oh, that was that one. I watched another one. It's just no emotions, At least with America, there's a little bit of juice in it. So hopefully they get through. But will they? I have no idea.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure either. I've watched every single game besides one game that I missed. But I think it's gonna be a hard game, and like you said, they haven't performed well under pressure. But the U.S. have the better team, so they should be winning that game. But we'll see.
I love the Matt Turner story. That's one thing I like is, a kid who didn't play till he was like 16 and now he's the U.S. goalie. So I'll root for him.
That is a pretty good story. Well, thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate
Nice talking to you guys.
All right, nice talking to you,
Talking
Mike.
to you too. Good seeing you. Thanks for coming.
We'll do it
on.
again sometime.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Nice.
Anytime, Mike. Absolutely.
All right. I gotta do kids' bedtime, so I'll see you guys.
All right. Have a good night.
Yeah, have a good night. Take care, man.
Yes, sir. That was Michael Hurley. Again, content producer, WBZ CBS Boston. Make sure you guys are following Mike on social media. It's at Michael F. Hurley on Twitter. Make sure you guys give him a follow. Got a lot of expertise on the Patriots. Make sure you guys are following us as well. We're at ProFan Sports on everything except for Instagram, and that's at ProFans_sports. You know, once again, thank you guys for supporting us, tuning in to the show, liking, subscribing, commenting. Make sure you're doing that if you haven't subscribed too. You know, that's the best way you can support the channel. And with that said, man, hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. You know, once again, happy holidays to y'all. And until the next episode, we out.
So everyone, have a good week. See y'all next week. Thanks for watching.